Hey there, I'm the storyteller from Nightmare at 3 a.m., and I'm here to keep you company tonight. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. When you're ready, turn off the lights, get comfortable, and relax. The story's about to begin. I've never told anyone this. I'm not even sure I should. But it's one of those memories that waits for you in a dark corner of your mind. And when it comes back, it hits you just like the first time. The cold, the doubt, the kind of fear that feels real. This happened at the end of October last year. I live alone in a quiet neighborhood out here in Oregon, in a small house I got after my dad passed away. It had been raining every day that week. Not a storm, just that steady, endless drizzle that makes it feel like time has stopped. It was a Tuesday evening. I'd just gotten out of the shower, threw on an old t-shirt, and went to the kitchen to heat up some pizza. I wasn't even hungry, to be honest, but the silence in the house was bothering me. I left the TV on in the living room just for some background noise. One of those news reruns, soft and drawn out. Rain tapping against the awning. No cars outside, just me, the microwave beeping, and the smell of damp wood sneaking in through the window cracks. So far, everything felt normal. The weird part started when I went to grab my phone, which I'd left charging in the bedroom, and it wasn't on the cable anymore. I figured I must have unplugged it and left it somewhere else, or maybe it slipped off the nightstand, but it was nowhere to be found. 5 minutes later, I saw it sitting on the armrest of the couch, locked. But the voice recorder app was open, like someone had tapped it by accident. I swear, I don't remember doing that. The recording was just the living room background, TV playing, rain in the distance. You could hear me walking to the kitchen, then silence. But at 32 seconds, a sharp sound, like a floorboard creaking, right near the front door. I paused, replayed it, listened again. It wasn't the TV, it was inside the house. I laughed. That kind of nervous laugh you give yourself when you're trying not to panic. Turned everything off and went to the door. Still locked. But the welcome mat was crooked, and worse, the chain lock, the one I never use, was dangling loose from the latch. That's when my stomach dropped. It's hard to explain what I felt after that. It wasn't immediate panic. It was slow, creeping, like something curling itself inside me. I went back to the living room, closed the curtain, and switched my phone to airplane mode. But as I sat down, I heard 3 quick knocks against the back wall of the house. Hard to mistake, like someone knocking with their knuckles. And then, nothing. I sat there frozen, listening, TV off, street dead quiet, only the rain. And then the worst part came. The motion light in the hallway flicked on. I got up right away, grabbed an old flashlight from the drawer, and locked myself in the bedroom. My heart was hammering in my throat. Everything outside was dark again. I sat on the floor, back against the bed, flashlight in hand, just listening, for nearly an hour. The rain got heavier, and at 11:19 p.m., I wrote it down or I'd forget. The front doorknob turned. Slowly, click, click, then a gentle push, like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure they were allowed to come in, but the deadbolt was in place. I'd locked it. When the sun came up, I left the house and went straight to the nearest police station. I told them everything, but there wasn't much to report. No damage, no evidence, nothing stolen. just an open voice recorder and that lingering sense that someone had been inside the house that whole night. I changed the locks, installed a camera. None of it helped, because scarier than the idea that someone tried to break in is the thought that maybe they already did and just didn't want me to know. Since that night, every time it rains, I remember something my dad used to tell me when I was a kid. You don't have to see danger to know it's nearby. And it was. The rain had started in the late afternoon, but it only turned into a full downpour after 10. I'd been alone in the cabin since morning. It was my first free weekend in months, and I came out to the family house just to breathe. Ever since my sister's accident, I'd developed a certain discomfort with silence, but I was trying to treat this like therapy. The house wasn't big. One open room on the ground floor, couch, fireplace, a small kitchen. Upstairs, just a bedroom and a bathroom. Simple, old wood, full of the sounds old wood makes. I'm a nurse, and I haven't slept well in years. Even when I do sleep, I wake up easily, especially when it rains. My dad used to say, rain noise clears the mind, but all it ever does is make me more alert. I was finishing up a pan in the sink when the power cut out. No flicker, just gone. Just the sound of rain pounding the roof. I grabbed my phone. 11:07 p.m., no signal. Not unusual out here. I'd prepared flashlight, candles, lighter. But still, something about how suddenly the dark came down made me freeze for a second. I went to the living room and lit a candle on the side table. The flame showed my reflection in the front door glass. My face looked older than I remembered. Damp hair from condensation, sunken eyes. I either needed more time alone or a lot less. The first different sound came from above, a sharp crack, like wood giving under weight. The cabin didn't have an attic or crawl space, just ceiling and roof. It creaked all the time, but this wasn't a creak. It was a low, dense snap, followed by total silence, like even the rain was holding its breath. I stood still, listening. Nothing. The candle flame shook, not in rhythm with the wind. I moved to the stairs and looked up. Total black. Grabbed the emergency flashlight. Strong beam, but didn't reach far. I went up 2 steps. The third let out a high-pitched squeak. Then another crack above, opposite side of the roof now. Or was it the porch? Hard to tell with all that rain. Then I noticed the latch on the back door was off. I went back down slowly, pointed the flashlight. It was slightly open, 2 fingers wide maybe, just enough for wind or something else. I froze. My chest started aching, like with patience and early panic. But I wasn't panicking, technically. My hands weren't shaking. My body was just trying to decide whether to bolt or stay frozen. I closed the door, locked it, left the flashlight on the table, and lit another candle. This one crackled loud, almost as if it didn't want to burn. And then I heard footsteps, upstairs, slow, one at a time. I stayed still for a while, no idea how long. The candle got heavy in my hand. The sound continued, not water, not wood, footsteps, dragging, no rush. My mind tried to explain it away. Someone must have gotten in while I was showering, earlier in the day. But I'd locked the door, hadn't I? Pretty sure. Almost. I climbed back up, 1 step at a time. The flashlight was trembling now. Not the beam, my hand. At the top, I turned it off and waited. Short hallway, bedroom door half open. So was the bathroom, both pitch dark. I thought I heard a short breath, almost panting from the bedroom, almost. Could have been the wind or the pipes. Could have been my own heart. I flicked the light on, aimed at the bed, nothing. I stepped closer and saw it. Not someone, but signs. The mattress was sunken in on one side, like someone had just been sitting there. The blanket tugged slightly, the pillow caved in right in the center. No one sleeps like that. Not naturally. I stared too long. Then came another sound from below. Another crack. Maybe glass this time. My whole body reacted before I could think. I rushed down, almost slipping. No one. But the back door was wide open again. And now, muddy footprints across the kitchen floor. I grabbed my phone. Still no signal. I spotted the car keys. Thought about driving. But was it safer to run out in the storm or stay inside and wait? I sat on the living room floor near the unlit fireplace, trying to breathe. I thought of my sister, how she was scared of the dark when we were kids. I'd always say, "There's nothing out there." And now here I was, locked inside, not knowing what had been out there, or worse, what had already been inside. Maybe it was just a drifter, someone looking for shelter. Maybe the power came back on with a harsh snap. Loud, I jumped. Lights came on, TV flickered, freezer groaned. I ran to the back door and locked it again. Looked out the front window, just rain, just field, just night. I didn't sleep. Not that night. Not the ones after. I left 2 days later, left the keys with my cousin. She thanked me. She never showed up. Now, whenever the power flickers during a storm, I think about the moment I realized someone could have been living with me for days, and I'd never noticed. As Raina Maria Rilke once said, fear is just the shadow side of what we still want to understand. I follow that thought, but some nights I don't want to understand anything. I just want it to be morning. It started with a dripping sound, not from a faucet, from the ceiling. A slow, spaced-out tap that woke me up around 3 a.m. I live alone in a 2-story house, about 20 minutes outside the city. Quiet neighborhood, lots of trees, the kind of place where you hear your fridge turn on. So when a new sound appears, you notice. It had been raining non-stop since the day before. Heavy. I'd been stuck inside, working remotely, watching the storm press against the windows like it wanted in. The power had gone out around 10:30, no warning, just a pop and silence. Nothing unusual for the area. That night, I fell asleep on the living room couch. Laptop still open, TV off. I woke up to the drip, sat up, and waited. Tap, tap, coming from above. Maybe the attic. I didn't even remember if the house had one. It was one of those impulsive rentals. Signed everything online, never met the owner. I stood up, moved silently, and listened. The rain was still strong, but this sound had a rhythm. It was coming from inside. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and headed upstairs. The hallway was cold. I looked at the ceiling above the staircase. Nothing. But when I stood still, I could hear it again. Tap, tap, tap. There was a square panel in the ceiling, barely visible. The attic door. No string, no ladder, just a smooth panel flush with the wood. I dragged a chair from my bedroom and reached up. I had to push and slide it open manually. A little dust fell. The smell that came down was strong. Wood, dampness, and something like stale sweat. I aimed the flashlight into the dark. Something was staring back at me. Not a face, but a mirror. It took me a few seconds to register what I was seeing. A rectangular mirror leaning against one of the attic's inner walls. In the flashlight's beam, I saw part of the reflection. My raised arm, the chair, the hatch opening, but there was more reflected than what should have fit in the space. I turned the flashlight off by instinct, sat in the dark for a moment. The sound of the rain felt muffled up there, then I turned it back on. The mirror hadn't moved, nothing had, but something bothered me. The way it was angled downward, like it had been positioned to watch whoever opened the hatch or lived below it. I closed the panel, locked the feeling away, but the dripping sound continued. Now it was coming from inside the bedroom. I walked in, swept the room with the flashlight. Drops on the floor, little puddles, irregular, leading from the far wall to the center of the room. They weren't coming from the ceiling, not from any visible source. They were just there. I leaned against the door and waited. 20 seconds, 30. The flashlight started flickering, so I turned it off, sat in the dark, and heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Fast, shallow, weak. On the other side of the wall, my whole body locked up. I thought about running outside, but the storm was relentless. My car was on the far side of the garage. Outside. Between me and it. Just glass and mud. I grabbed my phone. Still no signal. Then something fell in the attic. A soft but solid thud. Like the mirror had been moved. I stood slowly and put my ear to the wall. Silence. Not total. A damp sound, like wet cloth dragging across wood. I took 2 steps back and left the room. I spent the night in the kitchen, back against the fridge, holding the biggest knife I could find. The power came back around 5 a.m., and with it, the phone signal. I didn't call the police, and to this day, I'm not sure why. Maybe because I still didn't know what I'd even report, or maybe because, like Elias Canetti once said, the unknown threatens us less than what we almost understand. I follow that thought, but ever since that night, any time I hear a drip or see an old mirror in an empty room, my first instinct is to turn it toward the wall, just in case. My name is Jonathan Keller. I'm 34 years old, a freelance cartographer, and since last year, I've been living on a rural property in central Missouri. The house belonged to my grandfather, a man who rarely spoke, but always looked at you like he was waiting for you to understand something he'd never say out loud. After he passed, the house sat empty for years. When I lost my job at the mapping firm, I decided to move in and start over. The place is remote. A dirt road leads straight to the house and ends there. No neighbors in sight. Just one power pole at the edge of the property. It used to be a working farm, but the fields have been overgrown for years. The land feels wide and unused, like something was scraped away and never put back. I had taken on a freelance contract to update forest maps for the region, which meant I could work from home and go days without seeing another person. The cell signal was weak, and the internet barely held up. But at first, the quiet helped. At least, I thought it did. The house wasn't made for comfort, it was made to last. Thick wooden walls, narrow windows, a heavy roof that creaked in every wind. At first it felt nostalgic, but as the cold came in and the air got heavy, the house began to feel more like a weight than a refuge. One Thursday night, it started raining just before sunset. By 11:17 p.m., the power went out. Just a sudden click, and then nothing. I grabbed my flashlight, checked the breaker box. No response. My phone had no signal either. Heavy rain, no lightning, just water and wind pressing in from all sides. When I looked out the kitchen window, I saw something that froze me in place, a white light out in the field. Low, fixed, perfectly still, maybe 150 meters from the house. Too low for a street lamp, too high for a phone flashlight. Cold, artificial, and lighting only a tight circle of wet grass around it. It didn't blink. It didn't move. I locked all the doors, turned off every light I had, backed away from the windows. The light stayed there for 30 minutes, motionless, and then, without a flicker, it disappeared. The next morning, with the sky still gray, I walked out to where I'd seen the light. There was nothing. No tire marks, no footprints, no equipment. Just a slightly drier ring of grass, like something had hovered there briefly and left without touching anything else. I came back to the house with a pressure in my chest I couldn't shake. I kept glancing out the window every few minutes. The silence inside the house no longer felt peaceful. It felt expectant. 2 days passed. Saturday night, the rain returned, harder this time. I was in the kitchen washing the glass when I noticed something off with the tap water. It came out tinted, slightly red, like rust. I shut it off quickly, smelled it. No strong odor, but the color wasn't right, like something had disturbed the pipes from the inside. I went upstairs to grab my phone, planning to take a photo and send it to the local plumber later. But when I reached the top of the stairs, I froze. The front door was open, not wide, just cracked, 4 fingers at most. And sitting on the doormat was a pair of rubber boots, caked in fresh mud, empty. My first thought was that maybe I'd forgotten to lock the door, but I always lock it, and those boots, they weren't mine. I closed the door slowly, locked it, engaged the bolt. I didn't touch the boots, I just left them there. Sunday night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a dull metal sound from downstairs. I grabbed a kitchen knife and the flashlight. The door was shut, but the metal bolt I'd installed just days earlier was lying on the floor, removed, not broken. And in the center of the living room, sitting on the rug in front of the fireplace, was a small oval mirror. Face up. I didn't own that mirror. Its frame looked identical to one my mother used to keep in our house when I was a kid. I hadn't seen one like it in years. I had no explanation for how it got there. The house was locked, the property fenced. I was alone. I sat on the couch with the knife in hand and tried to convince myself I was wrong. Maybe the mirror had been here all along. Maybe I was just tired, but I knew better. I stayed 2 more nights. By Tuesday, I packed what I could and left. I didn't take the mirror. I locked the door, but I didn't look back. I've never returned, and I still can't fully explain what happened out there. What haunts me the most isn't what I saw. It's how long I waited before admitting something was wrong. The time I spent trying to make it all make sense while something or someone kept pushing my limits. Clarice Lispector once wrote, "What truly frightens me is what hasn't been named yet." I follow that thought. And every time the lights flicker during a storm, I just hope nothing is looking back at me. My name is Travis Morrison. I'm 28 years old and I live in Mason, a small town in central Illinois that feels like it stopped evolving sometime around 1987. I moved here because I needed to start over. I used to work in IT in Chicago until last year, when my contract wasn't renewed. Rent there became impossible. My parents are gone. The few people I talk to live inside apps. So I came to Mason, a town that barely shows up on Google Maps, where rent is cheap, the streets are quiet, and everything moves slow enough for you to catch your breath. I found a small apartment in an old building near the train station. Unit 304. No luxury, tiny kitchen, worn carpet, peeling paint around the door frames, but affordable, functional, the kind of place you disappear into. My first night there, it rained. Not much, just enough to paint slow streaks on the windows. The power went out around 9:30, but came back a few minutes later. When it did, the TV was on, tuned to a channel I didn't remember choosing. A still camera, a hallway, no sound, no cuts, just a dark, peeling hallway on screen. I figured it was a local access glitch or a signal bleed from some internal system. I turned the TV off. The next morning, I found the kitchen cabinet open. I was almost sure I'd closed it. Could have been the draft, could have been me. But the little things kept piling up. Tuesday morning, my toothbrush was on the bathroom floor, wet, as if it had just been used. Thursday, I woke up to find my phone unplugged, screen cracked, with the front-facing camera still open in the app. Friday night, the TV turned itself back on. Same channel, same hallway, but this time, a figure stood at the far end, completely still. I stared for minutes, blinked. It didn't move, and then, slowly, it took one step forward. I turned the TV off, unplugged it, then went to the window. The rain had started again. Early Sunday morning, I woke to a sound from the kitchen. The microwave clock read 3:04 a.m. I opened the bedroom door slowly. My own hallway felt tighter, like the walls had pulled in slightly. The kitchen light was on, the TV was off, but in the reflection on the window, there was a silhouette standing behind me. I turned. Nothing, but on the rug, there were wet footprints leading from the window to the hall. I grabbed my backpack, a few clothes, my wallet. I didn't sleep again that night. In the morning, I called a ride share and left for Springfield, where an old coworker let me crash on his couch. I never went back. Part 4, what I don't open. A month later, I called the rental agency just to check. The building had been shut down. Curious, I asked why. The woman hesitated, then she said, there was a tenant on the 3rd floor, Unit 304. He lived alone, died in the apartment, and wasn't found for days. Happened last year. I said thank you and hung up. I didn't tell her I'd lived there since. Didn't mention that. For nights on end, I kept waking up at the same exact time. 3:04 a.m. I still don't know what I experienced. But every time the TV flickers or something falls in the bathroom, I remember that hallway, that reflection. As Shirley Jackson once wrote, no organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. I follow that thought. There are doors I've simply decided never to open again. My name is Eric Nichols. I'm 36 years old and a high school biology teacher in Missoula, Montana. I live alone in a modest house I bought after my divorce 2 years ago. The street is quiet, a dead end lined with pine trees and low fences. My neighbors are mostly retired, the kind of people who nod and go back inside. At night, the only light that reaches my window comes from a street lamp on the corner. During the day, it's just wind and maybe the occasional lawnmower somewhere in the distance. I chose this house for 2 reasons. It was cheap, and the living room had a big picture window facing the street, one of those that takes up the whole wall. I always liked the idea of watching the world pass by from the safety of inside, but now I avoid looking through it, and I keep the curtains closed. It started on a Monday. I had just gotten home from school. A gray, rainy evening. I dropped my bag in the corner, made some coffee, and sat on the couch. I opened a book, read half a page, and ended up falling asleep right there, knees tucked in, the sound of rain tapping the glass. I woke up with that strange kind of feeling, not a sound, not a startle, just that emptiness you get when you forget where you are. It was dark. The TV was off. The book was on the floor. My eyes went straight to the window. Someone was standing on the sidewalk, not close, not threatening, just there, still, facing away, like they were waiting for someone to open the door. I stared for a while, minutes maybe, blinked, still there. I stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen, turned on the light. When I came back, the figure was gone. The next few days were normal. I went back to work, graded papers, bought groceries. The routine resumed, and I convinced myself I must have dreamed it or imagined it. Then Thursday night, around 10, I was doing the dishes when I heard a metallic tick from the living room, like something lightly tapped the window. I went to check. In the lower left corner of the glass, there was a small circular mark, like it had been hit by a pebble. But outside, there was nothing. No rock, no footprints, and the ground was dry, no rain, no reason. I stopped sleeping on the couch, went straight to my bedroom, locked the door, and turned on a noisy fan to drown out whatever the house decided to sound like at night. But even then, the house started to feel off. The passage of time inside it felt fractured. I'd wake up before my alarm but feel like I hadn't slept. Things shifted. Small things but frequent. A mug on the wrong side of the sink, the TV remote upside down, the dish towel folded away I never folded. No one else had a key. I started writing things down, grabbed an old notebook, and began logging what I noticed. Monday, 5:43 p.m. Car keys on the living room floor. Tuesday, 6:12 a.m. Living room curtain slightly open, though I closed it last night, Wednesday, 7:20 p.m. Hallway, light on, don't remember flipping it. Friday night, around 11 p.m., I woke to a familiar sound, one that didn't belong. The creak of the living room couch, like someone slowly sat down on it, but I was in my bed, alone. I got up, turned on every light in the house, checked each room. Nothing. Back in the living room, I looked out the window. He was there again, but this time he was facing me. The street lamp outlined his shape, tall, thin, motionless. I couldn't make out a face, but I didn't need to. I knew he was looking straight at me. I don't know how long I stood there. I only moved when he slowly tilted his head, not down, not up, but to the side, like he'd just heard something. Then he turned away and walked into the fog. The next morning, I went to work like everything was fine. But something had shifted. Not just fear, it was like the house had been altered, like every wall now carried a question I didn't want to answer. I stayed another week. I slept less, kept lights on, never touched the curtains. Until one morning, after another broken night, I found something written on the inside of the living room window. Just a thin smear, like someone had traced a finger through the condensation. It said, "It's warmer in here." I moved out the next day, packed everything, dropped the keys at the rental office. When they asked why, I said I needed more sunlight. A lie. Now, I live in an apartment downtown, 3rd floor, no big windows, no street view. Still, sometimes when I pass by the sliding door to the balcony, I feel like something is watching me from the other side. My dad used to say something when I was a kid. If you stare at the street long enough, the street starts staring back. I didn't get it back then. Now, I closed the curtains without thinking. My name is Daniel White. I'm 33 years old and work as a structural draftsman for a civil engineering firm in Oregon. Last year, after a breakdown during a federal project, my boss suggested an extended leave. I agreed. I spent 4 months away from the city, staying at my late uncle's house, a one-story home in a quiet little place called Willard, surrounded by woods and always damp. The house sat in a blind spot on the edge of town. Dead-end street, no street lamps, just an open field to the left and a thick tree line out back. When it rained, the sound traveled through the walls like the whole roof was sinking in. I went there for the solitude, to sleep, to breathe, to shut everything out. The only rule was, stay out of the back room. That room, according to my dad, had been sealed years ago after a break-in. My uncle swore someone, or something, had tried to come through the window during a storm. He wasn't unstable, just shaken. From that night on, he never entered the room again. Never sold the house, just locked the door and left it. It looked like a normal door, as plain white, but it had 3 external locks, bolted on the outside like the danger wasn't keeping something from coming in, but from getting out. The first week passed without issue. The house was cold but quiet. I spent my days reading, scribbling notes, trying to sleep 8 hours for the first time in years. It rained almost every night. The sound on the roof was almost soothing. By the second week, I noticed the back of the house felt colder than the rest. Not because of the weather. The floor near the back room door was noticeably colder, like there was no insulation behind it, like the room was hollow. Of course, I thought about opening it, but I didn't. Not even when I heard for the first time something moving inside. It was Tuesday around midnight. I was eating cereal in the kitchen, listening to the rain on the window, when I heard a crack, dry wood snapping. It came from the back hallway. I grabbed a flashlight and walked slowly. No lights in that part of the house. The floor creaked beneath my feet. The door looked the same, still locked, but something inside made a soft sound. A drag, like a nail or a fingertip, sliding across the wall. I stood there for 20 seconds, maybe more, then walked back to the kitchen. That night, I locked my bedroom door and slept light. Thursday night, I woke up to 3 soft knocks from the back room. Not house noises, not rain, knocks. Precise. Waiting. This time, I didn't go check. I just listened, and I swear for a moment I could hear someone breathing, shallow, slow, close to human. Friday morning, something had changed. One of the locks was lying on the floor, screws torn out, no sound, no break-in, but there it was. I dragged the heaviest chair in the house and wedged it against the door. That night, I slept in my car, engine running, rain pounding the windshield, until sunrise. When I came back, everything looked untouched, until I noticed the doorknob was turned down, like someone had tried it. Saturday night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to run. I needed to see, to know. I brewed coffee, turned off every light, and sat in a chair at the end of the hallway, directly across from the back room door. I stayed there for hours. No sound, just the rain. At 2:43 a.m., it happened. The doorknob turned. Slowly, click, click. Then a weak push. Like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure they were allowed out. I didn't move. And through the gap under the door, I saw the shadow of two bare feet, motionless. They stood there for almost a full minute, then turned away, but not toward the door. The shadow pulled back and disappeared into the room. I left at sunrise. I never went back. My brother picked up the rest of my stuff weeks later. I didn't tell him everything, but sometimes when it rains hard and the hallway lights flicker, I remember what my uncle used to say before he died. Some people don't want to escape. They just want to know if someone's still watching. I was watching, and I never want to be again. I've never been the type to get attached to places. But that house, whether I liked it or not, knew me better than anyone else ever did. After my mom passed away, there was no one left to take care of it. The house, I mean. It sat empty for a few months, and now that things had settled, I came back. I came back to decide what to do, whether I'd sell it, rent it, fix it up, or just leave it the way it was. In the end, I just needed to see it with my own eyes, even if only for a few days. I arrived on a gray Monday afternoon. Forecast said it'd rain all week. It did. From the first moment, it felt like the rain was already inside the house. The air was damp, the windows fogged up, and the floor was colder than I remembered. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked through every room, slowly. The bedroom I slept in until I was 17, the living room with the old couch, the kitchen where my mom used to spend all her time before she got sick. Everything was the same, but everything felt smaller, like the house had shrunk while I was gone. I spent that whole first day in silence, not because I was grieving, more like I was being cautious. I didn't know if the house wanted me back. I know that sounds stupid, but that's exactly what it felt like. I didn't bring much. A backpack with clothes, my laptop, charger, a notebook. Enough for 3-4 days. That's all I thought I needed. I was wrong. The first night passed almost normally. Light rain, some wind. My footsteps echoed more than they should have down the halls. The kitchen clock still worked, but little by little, the house started to feel offbeat. The first sign was small, almost nothing. The welcome mat was crooked, not when I got there, but after I came back from the garage that night. And I remember exactly how I left it, straight, lined up with the door. My mom was obsessive about that. A crooked mat brings bad luck, she used to say. It stuck with me. At the time, I just nudged it with my foot, straightened it, and moved on. But that was the first crack. At 2:43 a.m., I woke up to a sound that froze me. Not loud, not violent, but clear. 3 sharp knocks, not on the door, not the window, on the living room floor, like someone had dropped the handle of a wooden umbrella or taken one heavy step. I lay there for maybe 30 seconds, listening to the house breathe. Nothing. I got up, walked to the stairs, and went down with my phone flashlight on. Everything was where it should be, except in the corner of the living room near the door to the kitchen, the welcome mat, crooked again. The second day was wetter. Rain picked up, and the way it echoed off the roof started to get under my skin. I had tried to distract myself, cleaned a bit, flipped through old papers, found a box of VHS tapes, old stuff. Christmas, graduation, birthdays, I barely remembered. One tape had my handwriting on it from when I must have been around 10. Mom's room, 11 p.m. That stopped me for a moment. I had no memory of that tape, no idea what was on it, but just looking at it made me feel sick. I couldn't bring myself to watch it. At 5:32 p.m., the doorbell rang, and somehow that scared me more than any sound I'd heard at night, because there was no reason for anyone to be there. I looked through the living room window. Nothing. Peeked through the kitchen one. The street was deserted as usual. Heavy rain, no cars. I didn't open the door until 5:50. Nothing. Just the wet porch and the welcome mat, crooked again. That night, I locked every door and left the upstairs hallway light on. I lay down with the TV on low volume, but I didn't even fall asleep, because at 3:17 a.m., the hallway light turned off by itself. It wasn't a power outage. Every other light was still on, just that one. I got up, walked toward the hallway, heart in my throat. The light was back on. I blinked and it was lit again, and then I heard it. A dragging sound, a wet whisper like barefoot steps on the kitchen floor. I ran to the stair, but by the time I reached the bottom, everything was dry, except for the welcome mat, which was now gone. I didn't sleep, not for a minute. I sat at the top of the stairs, hallway light on, eyes locked on the gap between the railing bars, just waiting for something to move, but nothing did. Nothing, except time. At 6:15 a.m., I went downstairs for the first time since the middle of the night. I walked slowly, phone in hand, lights on, silence like a morgue. In the living room, the welcome mat was back, but not how I remembered it. It was folded in half, bottom side up, and on it, a faint muddy imprint, a footprint, bare, no shoes, no socks, not mine. That morning, I searched the entire house, windows, doors, closets, attic. I looked under the sink, behind the fridge, inside the old linen chest my mom used to use. Nothing, no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, but still, there were footprints in the kitchen too. Same dirt, going in, not coming out. I thought about leaving, seriously, but something kept me there. Guilt, maybe, or a need to understand, so I stayed. Late in the afternoon, the sound started. Not the house's sounds, mine. I was in the living room, going through a box of old papers, when I heard my own voice coming from the kitchen, faint, muffled. "Don't touch that." That was Mom's. I froze. I remembered exactly when and why I said that. It was the day my younger brother tried to throw out one of Mom's old notebooks, right after the funeral. But my brother never came back to this house. I went to the kitchen. My phone was sitting on the counter, recording. The clip was 3 seconds long. Just my voice, like it had been pulled straight from memory. No background noise, no interference, just clean audio. Like I had said it right there just now. I deleted it immediately. But 3 minutes later, the phone buzzed. New recording, 1 second long. This time, It was just breathing. My breathing. That night, I did what my mom would have called a stupid impulse. Dragged the mattress into the living room, left every light on, and jammed a chair under the front door handle. Put my phone on airplane mode. Still, at 2:11 a.m., the TV turned on by itself. Volume loud. Blue screen, no signal. Then a video began to play. Old home footage. One of those tapes Mom used to make with her camcorder. I recognized myself immediately. Around 12 years old, sitting on the couch, right where I had the mattress now. It was my birthday. I was unwrapping a gift. The video was shot from the shelf, but our shelf never had a camera. Worse, in the video, I looked directly at the lens and said, "There's someone there." Hard cut, black screen. I left the house. Rain or not, I jumped into the car and slept in it, parked in front of the garage, but I couldn't close my eyes because at 3:48 a.m., the front door opened by itself. No sound, no wind, and a figure stepped out into the doorway staring at me. I couldn't see its face, just a thin shape, motionless. After a few seconds, it stepped back inside and locked the door. What made me go back into the house that morning wasn't courage, it was exhaustion. My body ached, my head was pounding, and the rain had kept slamming into the windshield for hours while I sat inside the car doing nothing but breathing. The door, the same one I saw being locked from the inside just hours earlier, was now unlocked. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there, staring. The dark wood, the cold handle, the mat, missing again. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. Silence, but not normal silence. This one felt heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to move first. And I did. Everything looked normal until I saw it. On the hallway wall, someone had written in thick black marker, "The house doesn't want you here." The handwriting was mine. I recognized it instantly, but I had no memory of ever writing that. Next to it, in the same shaky lettering, "Neither do we." I went straight to the kitchen. That old tape I avoided watching the first day was still sitting there. Mom's room, 11 p.m. I shoved it into the old VHS player, which somehow still worked. The image flickered to life. It started in the hallway, grainy, bluish night vision like a security camera. The person filming moved slowly, barefoot, their breathing shallow, step by step, toward my mother's bedroom. The camera stopped at her door. A voice whispered, "Are you still here?" Then it walked into the room. The camera approached the bed. The covers moved, and a hand slowly emerged. Not my mom's, not human, pale, wrinkled, the fingers impossibly thin. Then the camera fell to the ground. The image shook violently, and finally, the tape cut to a shot of me as a child sitting on the bed, looking straight at the lens, and saying just one word, "Stay." At that point, I couldn't tell what was memory and what was delusion. I locked myself in the bedroom and shoved the dresser in front of the door. But the house didn't care about locks. It never did. At 4:12 p.m., the doorbell rang again, and this time it didn't stop. Press after press, like a dead hand was resting on the button. I crept to the window. No one. But on the sidewalk, something froze me. Footprints, not leading up to the door, leading away, wet, recent, and stopping right in the middle of the street. Nowhere else to go. That last night, I left my phone recording, not out of paranoia, out of instinct. I slept badly, but I slept. When I woke up, the recording had stopped at 3:33 a.m. The last sound it captured, my own voice whispering my name, like someone had leaned over me and said it, and I'd repeated it half asleep, But I don't remember saying anything. And worse, I wasn't even in my bed anymore. I was lying on the kitchen floor, alone, soaked in rain, with the broken tape beside me. I left the house that morning, never went back, never sold it. It's still there, shut and raining on the inside. Sometimes I get motion alerts from the camera I left behind, but when I try to open the video, it never loads. And every time the forecast says it'll rain for days on end, I dream about the house. And in the dream, there's always someone waiting at the door with my voice, my steps, my story. I've never liked going back to the town I grew up in. There's something strange about how small towns age. They don't really change, they just get darker. And everything looks smaller than you remember. It had been 5 years since I last set foot there, but in March, I had no choice. My aunt had passed away and she left me a house. No kids, no husband, no real neighbors. One of those rural homes that's far from everything, even the main road. I took the car, left Portland, and drove down the narrow road, listening to the windshield wipers drag through the rain, wondering if I should even get out. But I did. I got to the house just before dark. It looked untouched since 1999. Overgrown lawn, cloudy windows, and that dry, moldy wood smell inside. A smell I already knew and never liked for more than a minute. I planned to stay just a few days. That's what the lawyer suggested. Decide if you want to sell, fix it, or rent it out. But that was just an excuse. I knew I'd stay the weekend and leave as fast as possible. That first night, the rain didn't stop. The roof held, but the sound of the water against the glass felt louder than it should have been. I walked around, trying to recognize anything. A photo, a memory, nothing. It felt like sleeping in a place where someone from your family was born, but you feel zero connection to any of it. I crashed on the couch. The bedroom mattress had mold. The TV didn't work. So I just lay there in the dark, listening to the house breathe. At 2:14 a.m., I heard what sounded like a single step. Not creaking, not dripping. A step, and then silence. I froze. For a few seconds, I thought maybe I dreamt it while half awake, but I looked toward the front window, and the latch was open. I didn't leave it that way. I got up, closed it, locked it, then checked the rest of the house. All good. Back to the couch, light sleep. But the next morning, the window was unlocked again. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the ground was still soaked and the humid air made everything stick to your skin. I went straight to the living room window. It wasn't locked. I thought maybe it was the wind. Bad ceiling, anything reasonable. But deep down, I knew that window didn't open by itself. I walked around the house, going from room to room without doing anything useful. I went out to the old garage where I found a few stacked boxes of my aunt's stuff. Old things, useless, dusty. A suitcase full of moldy clothes. A portable radio that still worked. But one thing caught my eye. In the far corner, near a cracked section of the floor, there was a blanket laid out. Clean, like it had been used recently. I touched it. It was warm. That twisted my stomach. I rushed back inside and locked everything, closed the curtains, turned on every light, put my phone to charge, and started seriously considering leaving early. But it was still daytime, and part of me wanted to understand. I needed an explanation that didn't involve what I was starting to suspect, that someone was living in there, or at least very close by. That night, I slept on the couch again. I kept a kitchen knife under the cushion like that would help. Left the hallway light on. Played the local radio station really low just to fill the silence. The house stayed still until 3:27 a.m. That's when I heard the radio stop. A click. And then the sound of something being dragged upstairs. I got up, heart pounding, feet frozen. It couldn't be anything. I was sure no one was up there. I hadn't even opened my aunt's bedroom door. The handle, I remembered it was turned inward, but now it wasn't. I went to the foot of the stairs, light off, absolute silence. Is someone there? I called out. Quiet. Nothing. Then something fell upstairs, a dull thud, like glass or wood. I ran straight to the front door, unlocked it, and got out. No coat, no phone. I stood in the wet yard, breathing fast, waiting for anything, but no one came out. The bedroom light upstairs turned on by itself. I waited outside until daylight to go back in. When I did, the front door was still unlocked just as I had left it. I climbed the stairs slowly. In my aunt's bedroom, I found a toppled nightstand lamp, the window cracked open, and the garage blanket, now folded neatly at the foot of the bed. After seeing the blanket folded at the foot of the bed, I knew this wasn't paranoia anymore. I was not alone in that house. I went back downstairs and locked everything again. But it didn't matter anymore. Whoever had entered, if they'd ever left, knew the house better than I did. And worse, they knew where I was. I spent the rest of the morning pacing, ate something random, stared into every corner of the living room, waiting for something to move. The weather turned gray again, thin rain, quiet enough to erase all other sounds. And then, sometime in the afternoon, something even stranger happened. I went to the bathroom, left the door halfway open. When I came out, there was a plate sitting on the kitchen counter. It hadn't been there before. It was one of the house's old plates from the cabinets up top. And it had pieces of bread on it. Bitten. There was no going back. I rushed to grab my phone and called the police. I explained, asked them to send a unit. They said that since it was private property and there were no signs of forced entry, it would take a while to get someone out. They told me to leave the house if I felt unsafe, but I couldn't. Staying felt just as dangerous as leaving, and part of me wanted to see the face of whoever was inside. That night, I locked every room except mine. I stayed on a couch, knife close by, lights on. The rain was stronger, the windows rattled. At 2:18 a.m., the floor upstairs creaked. The wood screamed under someone's weight, step by slow step. This time, I didn't go check. I stayed completely still, waiting, and after about 3 minutes, I heard the kitchen door handle turning, software testing. I froze. I only started breathing again when it stopped. But a minute later, the hallway light turned on, and then the sound of footsteps in the basement I hadn't even opened yet. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight app. With the knife in my left hand and the light in my right, I opened the basement hatch, went down one step, then another. The air was heavier down there. The smell of damp and dust grew stronger. The light barely cut through the dark. But what I saw nearly made me fall back. There was a mattress on the floor, plastic bags, a water bottle, clothes, and a notebook. I opened it. Inside were drawings of the house, hand-drawn, floor plans with notes on where to hide, how to get in silently, which times were safe. And there, in the corner of the last page, he still doesn't know I come down while he's asleep. I climbed up with the notebook in my hand, but slipped on the third step. Made a loud noise. The flashlight fell, spinning. When I reached the top, the basement door was shut. I tried to push, locked from the outside, and then I heard footsteps upstairs, slow, deliberate, heading toward the living room. The basement door was shut, locked, and above me the floor creaked with every slow, careful step. One, pause, another, closer. I froze. My phone was in my pocket. My hands were shaking. I didn't think of calling anyone. I just waited. And then the footsteps stopped. I heard something being pushed up against the door, a chair, maybe a dresser. And after that, nothing. Time in the basement stopped existing. I sat on the floor, back against the cold wall. The flashlight had fallen to the bottom of the stairs. I was in complete darkness. The only thing keeping me warm was rage. Whoever it was toying with me, leaving signs, leaving crumbs, showing they could reach me, and hadn't. Yet, maybe they never would. Maybe they were just there to see how long I could take it. Eventually, the basement light flickered on by itself. It blinked once, and then stayed. Then, at the top of the stairs, the door opened. He was standing there, a thin man with thinning hair and dark clothes, no expression, small sunken eyes. He stared at me like he knew me. He said nothing, just took one step down, then another, stopped halfway, then calmly said, "You sleep heavy." That destroyed me from the inside, not because it was a threat, but because it was true. I remembered waking up once or twice over the past nights, but I always fell back asleep. And now, all the open doors, the plate, the blanket, had been placed while I slept. He took 2 more steps, now on the basement floor. I stood up, still holding the notebook. "What do you want?" I asked, barely a whisper. He didn't answer, just turned and walked back up. I stood there, listening. He walked to the kitchen door, opened it, left, and never came back. The police arrived 2 hours later. They searched everything, found a hidden space, took the notebook, but the man was never found. Not in the house, not in town. Months later, the house is still in my name, but it's empty. Sometimes I check the cameras I installed inside. I see the basement, I see the hallway, I see the living room. But one night at 3:12 a.m., one of the cameras froze for 5 full minutes. When it came back, the kitchen chair was turned toward the wall, and on the wall, written in charcoal, "I still watch you sleep." But what if someone or something was reading you too? Fifth Floor View is just one of the original stories from Nightmare at 3 a.m., where the terror doesn't come from ghosts or monsters, but from something far more real, human, patient, watching, closer than you think. If this story made you pause before looking in the mirror, if it left something crawling under your skin, you're exactly where you need to be. To get more stories like this, slow burning, immersive, and deeply unsettling, subscribe now. We don't offer comfort, only truth and tension. Now tell me, did you make it all the way through? Which moment got to you the most? Which story stayed with you long after the screen went dark? Leave a comment. I read everyone, even the ones no one else sees. Nightmare at 3 a.m. What you call paranoia, I call instinct.